doing it better. Got some lightweights, Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles, got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick that, relax, the team WSN.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show. I'm your host, as always, Malik Wright. Appreciate you guys spending your mornings with us, with me. On this show, as always, we'll be talking you through the latest news around the NFL, around the NBA, UFC, and so much more. Before we jump into the conversation, I'm just going to ask that you guys do us a favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. So let's start with last night's game, right? Ravens took on the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was a thriller. It was a game that we almost saw the Ravens come back and I don't want to say upset the Chiefs because it never felt like the Chiefs were in danger, but they definitely made it a close game. Some of my biggest takeaways from that game was Lamar Jackson seemed extremely reliant on his legs. He seemed extremely comfortable with Isaiah Likely as well. And it also asks a question: is Isaiah Likely tight end one in Baltimore now? I mean, I know Mark Andrews is coming back off of his injury. He dealt with a car accident earlier this summer, but it really feels like Isaiah Likely has emerged in the Ravens offense. Daniel, I'm really curious here what your thoughts were on the Isaiah Likely usage last night.
It was a great game, first off. And to be honest, I've been waiting for this. We've been discussing this, and once again, we appreciate everybody tuning into the show. When I look at Isaiah Likely, he is the new age of tight ends. And I'm just glad he's finally getting his shine, because the past, 2 seasons, even when Mark Andrews was hurt and Isaiah Likely was the main tight end, he wasn't getting tight end one numbers. He wasn't getting, 8 to 10 targets a game. But yesterday, damn right he did. And I think it's only fair when you got a receiver in Nelson Aguilar and a receiver in Rashad Bateman who aren't super consistent. So I'm glad that he's getting his shine. And I think the dude is going to be one of the great tight ends for the next multiple years, right? I think Isaiah Likely is in that tier, but right below the top 5 tight ends in the NFL. And with a guy like Lamar Jackson, Malik, that was my biggest takeaway, right? When I look at people, their predictions before the season, I saw a lot of people still predicting the Ravens to go out there and win the AFC North comfortably, to, push the Chiefs in the playoffs once again. And I just don't see that. I see an offensive line that was, mixed around this offseason. I see a defense that lost their defensive coordinator. I see, an offense who really is reliant on the super playmaking of Derrick Henry or of Lamar Jackson. Because when I look at Derrick Henry is only good when you have a lead. We saw that yesterday. The dude didn't get a single snap in the final 5 minutes of the game. And that's what concerns me. So I think the Ravens are a solid team. I think the Ravens will be a 9 to 10 win team. But there is a law in the NFL, and there's a law of regression. And it tends to hit teams that have everything go right for them the previous season, whether it's injury luck, like the Ravens had a lot of last year, and whether it was just great fortune. And that's what the Ravens had last year with the new offensive coordinator. So Lamar Jackson is the same quarterback we knew he was. He is an elite playmaker. But at the end of the day, when you need somebody to, get it done in crunch time from a pure quarterback standpoint, Lamar Jackson may not be that guy. And I look at 2 throws, Isaiah Likely throw at the end of the game. When Isaiah Likely got hurt, that was an overthrow. That was 1,000% on Lamar's, that was his fault. And you could say I'm nitpicking, Malik. You could definitely say that. But at the end of the day, you're a quarterback in the NFL. And it's the 4th quarter, and you need to make that throw. The Likely throw and the Zay Flowers throw, both on the same drive, on the same 1-minute drill, and Lamar Jackson failed to make those throws. So that's what concerns me. Mm-hmm. The Ravens are a good team. They'll always be consistent, but we're talking Super Bowl. It ain't happening this year.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've often been on record saying that their play style I didn't believe was conducive to long-term success. But the one thing I'll say is their defense didn't look like itself, honestly. Roquan Smith was still Roquan Smith, without going into too much detail regarding that. But I felt like their defense, especially the defensive backs, were getting kind of picked apart at some points.
Yeah.
It really felt like there was some communication issues on the Ravens defense, especially on the back end. You saw you saw guys being left wide open. They did not have an answer for an Xavier Worthy. It just was not the showing that if you're a Ravens fan, you were leaving feeling empowered by, if that makes sense. You probably start to have a little more questions. Let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, man. What did you see with the Kansas City Chiefs that made you that I guess do you feel like they're championship bound again? Do you feel hopeful? Do you think the Kansas City Chiefs escaped with the victory? What are your thoughts, your overall sentiments on the Kansas City Chiefs?
I think the Chiefs showed me everything I need to know about the Chiefs. The Chiefs
Wow,
are always going to be a team that has issues heading into the playoffs, respectfully. We saw that last year with the pass catchers. But the Chiefs, the one thing that has always been consistent is their quarterback and is their head coach, and even is their defense. Their defense at spots definitely looked a little spotty, but it's consistent. Like they've got a consistency with the Chris Jones and with their overall scheme that it's just going to be solid. And that's what is, my sentiment with the Chiefs. I can see the Chiefs, having a range of 10 to 13 wins. Even let's say if their regular season isn't as great and they sneak into, they barely win their division, and let's say they're the third or fourth seed, I'm still not going to have major questions about them in the playoffs. That doesn't mean they're not going to lose, but they are a team that they're going to be in the playoffs, and they have their X factor in Patrick Mahomes, and they have consistency with their defensive coordinator. And that's pretty much it. I love Rashee Rice. He's probably, the next guy that's going to step up into the next group of elites. I think he's very similar to an Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think he is the guy who's going to consistently get 8 to 10 targets a game for them. You got Xavier Worthy, who is that game breaker. And you got Travis Kelce, who they're just going to kind of shoo along into the playoffs. And once it's in the playoffs, say, hey, this is your last season, bro. Like this is pretty much it. So I look at the Chiefs, man, and they showed me pretty much everything I need to know. Like I said, I am concerned about their offensive line. Their two tackles. They got the rookie on one side, and then obviously Juwan Taylor on the other side. It definitely doesn't make me feel, happy, and I wouldn't be thrilled if I was a Chiefs fan. But at the end of the day, man, they've got the consistency of Mahomes. They got their head coach. They've got a lighter schedule, I would say, and we'll see what happens week 2. That's the real test, but they snuck out with a win. I'll definitely say that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are. I mean, this is what they do, right? They usually don't round into form until midseason, which is why I think the matchup with the Bengals is so pivotal.
Yeah.
And why I've been on record saying I think that is so massive for the Bengals to get the Chiefs this early, because you get to see if you can probably get a stronghold in this AFC if you handle business the way you're expected to. But again, I think I left that game feeling that both teams have some issues, especially on the defensive side of things. It was a very good game, especially for being a football fan. You like to see offenses alive and well, and I think we definitely saw that. I want to keep the conversation rolling and going. I want to also remind you guys, if you guys could do us a huge favor, give this video a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you guys don't miss when we go live or we upload content from the TWSN studios. We've had some pretty amazing content going out the last couple of days. We've had the sit down with Bengals wide receiver Jermaine Burton and Bengals defensive back Dejon Anthony go live on the YouTube channel, which was a really awesome sit down, and it was pretty cool. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying all the content that we have coming out on a consistent basis. And as I always say, drop your questions down in the comment section. We'll try to make sure we get to them. We'll be joined on the show today by TWSN analyst Parker Blake. We'll also be joined by our fantasy football analyst and Michael O'Hara and Steve Bradshaw. So I'm really excited to be talking ball with those guys. Daniel, right before we let Parker in here, let me ask you this. it was a profitable night for us
Very.
from a betting standpoint. If you could touch a little bit more on that, there were some awesome reads that we had for that game. I think I had the read of the night personally. I'm sorry, I got to just give
No,
myself
that's
that
fair.
crown with Noah Gray. But I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts were on the extremely profitable night. And if you guys look over here in the right hand corner, if you're not subscribed to the TWSN Patreon, that way you can get all of our picks. I suggest that you do that. We do a good job of trying to make you guys some money. We really go in depth with this thing. And yeah, Daniel, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a very good night. Surprisingly so. I think it was a game I liked. I didn't necessarily love the game beforehand. So once again, if you guys are looking at, our best bets, you guys can go subscribe to the Patreon. We've also got a group chat that we're discussing pretty much every single day, discussing our NFL bets, discussing MLB, even NBA as well. So just yesterday, real quick, we had Noah Gray over receiving yards. It was 11.5. That was an absolute snipe. One of my favorites was Justice Hill over 9.5 receiving yards. That cashed on the first drive. So we got the 2 player props out of the way. I personally like the under 47.5, and it leaned to the under. It was literally on the dot 47. And then there were a couple we liked. We also liked Rashee Rice over 5.5 receptions. That one easily cashed. And this is what we're going to be doing all season long, guys. We're looking at the plays that not everybody's talking about, not the money line plays that are an absolute lock. We're discussing plays that are going to be flying under the radar. We're watching the film so you guys can see who is the under the radar guys that your friends, that nobody online is really talking about. Because at the end of the day, like game like today, Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, everybody's going to be taking that, right? Everybody's going to be discussing. Even a guy like Jordan Love, everybody's going to take his over. We're going to go a little in depth on the Patreon as well as in the group chat. So make sure you guys tune in. We appreciate you guys as always. Staying tuned to our betting content.
And without further ado, I want to let our guy, TWSN analyst Parker Blake, joining the show for the first time. What's going on, Parker?
Hey, brother. Good to be on, man. Good to see y'all.
Yes, sir. Good to see you too, man. What a crazy night to start in the NFL, right, man? It was pretty insane. Good game, I would say, between the Ravens and the Chiefs, but definitely don't feel like either team are unbeatable, I would say. I think that both team showed some chinks in their armor, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens down the stretch. I definitely wanted to get on here with you, man, and sort of preview week 1 of the NFL and talk things through. And it wouldn't be a show, Parker, if we didn't talk Cincinnati versus the New England Patriots. I want to get your overall sentiment of that game, man. What are your thoughts? What are you expecting? The floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I think, I expect it to be a relatively week 1 performance out of the Bengals. I think this could be finally the year that maybe they don't go out and start 0-2 and they don't look like complete crap in week 1. Obviously, we have to lean on the history and just hope that doesn't happen. But I'm looking forward to kind of what feels like this officially fully revamped Bengals offensive line. Obviously looks like against this Patriots defensive line, which is going to be missing a Christian Barmore. And then even on the flip side of that, this Bengals defensive line being able to tee off on really what's an injury-riddled Patriots offensive line. And then outside of that, I mean, I've always said the game's one of the trenches, but I think, the Bengals are going to be able to overpower the Patriots, at least in the air for the most part. I know it's really solid. But I think kind of overall out of the entire game, I'm really just excited to finally see Christian Gonzalez get some run, see what he's able to do against these Bengals receivers. And that's really what I'm looking forward to most, to be quite honest with you.
For sure. You get to figure out how good he is, because he's going to have his work cut out for him, assuming, right, Jamar Chase plays. We're expecting T. Higgins to be out there. I agree with you, Daniel.
Yeah, what's going on, Parker? Nice to see you, man. A couple questions I got for you. First off, just talking about the Patriots versus Bengals game. Who are some of the guys that you see on the Patriots side, right? Whether it's a Ramondre Stevenson or, that could potentially be the game breaking to the Bengals, or is it going to be an absolute clean sweep for the Bengals?
I really do think it just comes down to Stevenson. If they're able to keep him up and keep him running and keep ahead of schedule, ahead of the chains, I think it could be a really long day for the Bengals. I know one of the biggest concerns Bengals fans have had is that run, the ability to stop the run. And so I feel like that's tilts in the Patriots' favor. But here's the hope, and the Bengals linebackers can really step it up, and we can see, a really fun debut out of Sheldon Rankins. Maybe even B.J. Hill takes another little bit of a step. But I think that's really what it comes down to. If the Patriots are able to eat clock and limit possessions, then I think it's going to be a really tight game. But if they, have a couple early 3 and outs and let the Bengals kind of take it to them, then it's probably going to be over pretty quick. I think that's really what's going to be what defines that game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I just want to kind of touch on some of these games with you, the rest of the NFL slate. First off, I want to get your thoughts on tonight's game, right? Eagles versus Packers. This is a game that a lot of people are talking about, right? The Eagles are big time, 3-point favorites right now. I personally think it could be a lot closer game than, some people are, expecting. But talk to me what you think so far about the Eagles, new Saquon Barkley. They got all the sexy toys. Do you think the Jason Kelsey loss hurts them a lot? Just talk to me about the Eagles versus Packers.
Yeah, I think the Eagles have done a great job at developing offensive line talent. I'm really excited. I believe it's Jurgens that's filling in for Kelsey, and I was a big fan of him coming out. They still have, the other pieces of that offensive line. Stout's always done a great job out there. And then Saquon, we all know what he at least has been in the past, and hopefully, he hasn't reached that cliff just yet. So he should be a pretty explosive back still.
No, I completely agree. And I think that's going to be the biggest key is really seeing how that offensive line shakes up. Another game I want to get your thoughts on, the Bears versus Titans. Personally, this is my upset of the week. I think the Titans go into Chicago and beat the Chicago Bears on Caleb Williams' rookie opener. I want to get your thoughts on the Tennessee Titans, though. Do you think that they could pull off an upset, as well as how much does the addition of Bill Callahan really help out the Titans' offensive line?
Yeah, I picked the Titans over the Bears as well. I think the Titans can do it, man. I'm a big fan of Will Levis. I think Bill Callahan is going to help that room long term. However, they still have to bring the talent in, and I still think they're really lacking a lot of their talent up front. But they have some really good pieces that I'm excited about. I love Cushenberry. Was a big fan of Skaronski. Interested to see what Latham will do. I know me and Malik have talked about Latham plenty, especially on this show. So we'll see how that goes. But I think the Titans are going to be able to pull it off. I think the Bears are going to be pretty underwhelming.
No, I agree. And that's where I just think it's too early of a task for Caleb Williams. And especially I think the Titans defense is actually really one of the most underrated defenses. I feel like it just doesn't get enough credit, especially with the moves that they made this offseason. I've got another game. And Parker, if you got any predictions for this week, don't feel free to jump in of just, any takes that you have. Sure. One other game I want to get your thoughts on is the Jets versus 49ers. This is another one where
you really stole my thunder.
Oh,
that
okay.
was my
you're good.
That
you're
was
good.
my damn
Take
thunder.
it.
I was going to talk to them about the the Jets versus the 49ers and the debut of Aaron Rodgers. But you know what? Great minds think alike. I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Yo, allow it. It's crazy. Yeah. All right. Well, the biggest thing I want to kind of ask you is just overall sentiment on that game, right? You got two sides of it. The 49ers are going to wallop the Jets because Aaron Rodgers doesn't have many reps with them, or the Jets are new Super Bowl contenders and Garrett Wilson is going to go off for 150 plus yards. What do you expect out of that game? And especially what do you expect out of Aaron Rodgers and Brock Purdy?
Yeah, no, I've seen so much Jets hype this offseason, and I don't understand it, to be honest. I'm not crazy high on the Jets. I know they brought in some good pieces, but it also feels like they're one of those teams where they're just older, right? Like it feels like there's so many pieces on this team that are just primed for a regression, even whether it's micro regression or falling off the cliff, we don't know. But I think, Garrett Wilson's the one thing that keeps this Jets team exciting, but I don't think that's enough to overpower a roster that's built like the 49ers is. I know you guys talked about that a little bit yesterday. But yeah, this game I think isn't going to be really compelling to start, but I think the 49ers are going to be able to pretty easily put the Jets away.
I think that's a very interesting statement because, the Jets are coming in with a lot of hype. A lot of people are very excited about what this Jets football team is going to look like, man. And to hear you come on here and basically say that you think the Niners are going to still be the San Francisco 49ers. And do you let me ask you this. Do you think do you buy into the overall sentiment that the Jets are just shoo-in for the playoffs? To me, I see a lot of concerns still with their roster, but I'm always curious to hear someone who's such a respected football mind, such as yourself, and hear your opinion on your thoughts on the New York Football Jets.
Yeah, no, I don't, like I said, I don't see all the hype. I don't know why we're just going to assume that, bringing back Aaron Rodgers is going to elevate this team so much. Bringing a guy in like Tyron Smith is going to just really take this team to that next level. They were a bad football team last year. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just because they're missing a piece or two. They were just a bad football team. So I don't think playoffs. I think the AFC East provides 4 of those teams to all have a pretty nice shot at trying to make it in, just because I think it's a pretty competitive division and not because there's a bunch of superpowers in it. But I think that's really their path, is just they got to hope some of the other teams in that division can fall off or run into issues, and they can kind of sneak into the playoffs.
For sure. Parker, I got to ask you, you know, you're known for your offensive line analysis and so much. And the cool thing about you joining TWS, and man, was to talk about more than just that, right? So I've got to ask you, right? Is there a team out there that you're high on that you feel like many people aren't high on that you think could really shock some people this year?
Yeah, I think, and I try to stay out of national media, so I could be totally off base. But I'm a big fan of the Packers youth. I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do this year. But I think the team that I'm most excited to watch, to be quite honest, is going to be this Broncos team, which sounds awful. But I do think, between Sean Payton and Bo Nix, this is going to be a team that's going to be able to just stay in games, not because they're trying to go out there and make land these huge punches, but they're going to keep themselves in games by managing the clock. They're going to keep their defense off the field. They're going to be able to get those 3 and outs. They're going to be able to division. But overall, my favorite team this year is the Raiders. I think the Raiders are going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to be a game or two away from winning the division by the end of the season.
Wow. No. I can't let you just slide after you said that.
Yeah.
I need you to dive a little more deep into that. So we're getting some Raiders love. I'll be honest with you. I feel like the Raiders are the least talked about team in the NFL. I feel like they're the least talked about team. I feel like we've done deep dives on so many teams. Even the Giants are getting talked about more than the Raiders. But why so much love for the Raiders?
No, I think in a league where all this offense is being pushed, all this explosive offense, explosive plays, all these metrics, what kind of falls on deaf ears is defense. I think their defensive line is going to be able to create some real problems for teams. I think their offense is going to be, again, I think a lot of the AFC West personally is going to be in that kind of game manager mindset. And so as long as their offense can stay out of their own way, I think they have both of these tight ends are going to look really good. They still have a really high. I think they have all the pieces that they can still make it happen. They've added some pieces on this offensive line. I'm interested to see how it comes together over some time. But again, I just lean back on this defense. I feel really good about some of the pieces they have in there, and just I love what I feel like they can do. However, I feel like that's also a take where they're either going to be last in this division or they're going to be pushing for that playoff spot and get it pretty easily. So I gotta hang my hat on some hot take at some point. I think that's the one I want to live with.
Listen, most people will see that as a hot take. I know I saw Daniel's face when you said it. He was like, "What?" So Daniel,
Yeah, no, I personally, I actually kind of like it, and the reason why I like it is because it's different, right? The easy sentiment is to say the Raiders are going to suck, but when you dive into it, it kind of makes sense when you look at the other teams. There is a world where the Chargers are the worst team in the division, right? When you look at the pure talent, if Justin Herbert's health isn't the greatest, and I'm with you, I look at their defense. People are forgetting about Christian Wilkins, right? And also one of my favorite guys, people forgetting that they got Jack Jones. They've got another good safety in Marcus Epps. Their defense was elite at the end of last year. People forget that they beat the Chiefs. So I'm with you in the sentiment that they can be a gritty team. And it really honestly just depends on how good the Chargers are, because if you can go and sweep one of the Chargers or Raiders, or Broncos, that puts you at 3 wins right off the bat. And exactly. I'm with you. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I think Max Crosby next to Christian Wilkins is going to be able to push for a defensive player of the year. He's probably not going to get it because he's not really the well-rounded type guy they need to be to win that award. But I think Max Crosby next to Wilkins is going to be asked for some teams, man.
No, for sure. And sorry about that hiccup there, Parker. We got some questions here for you that I want to make sure we get to before you head out of here. You're getting a lot of love, man. Daniel's getting a lot of love. I guess I'm chopped liver today, but let's get to our guy Gary Jellison. He says, could we ask Parker Blake more about the illegal formation and the way Jawan Taylor lined up with his leg way back?
Yeah, the legal formation stuff was interesting, and I actually was hoping to dive a little bit into that today just on my own time, trying to research what they're emphasizing specifically. Because I was confused as well, because I was always taught, it's all about covering the center, right? So whether you're on the ball as a receiver or you're on the offensive line, you have to cover the center, which I always interpreted and was taught to interpret as long as your head's covering up that hip of the center and they can't see the center's butt through your head, then you're on the line. So it sounds like, teams are obviously going to push that as far as they can. It's become a point of emphasis this season. So I'm interested to kind of dive back into this game and see what I can see from that perspective. I do think it was kind of interesting that it was made such a problem for, it felt like one team but not the other, as you know, along with kind of the false starts. But as far as, you know, just the one leg back, you can have as much if you want as long as your head's covering. That's where some of these taller offensive tackles can get away with a little bit more. And maybe I did see a couple people talking about maybe they're looking at where your kind of front foot's aligned. Is your front foot up on the line opposed to, you know, your head and body being kind of in line? So it's kind of an interesting rule that I've always interpreted one way, and it feels like, you know, there might be some other things to look at as far as how they're evaluating that. But yeah, I don't think Jawan Taylor looked like he was crazy in the backfield too often, opposed to what he looked like last year. I think kind of his bigger issue, in my opinion, is just the false starts. So
Fair. Gary Justin with another question says, Parker, what kind of a scheme can the Bengals use to stand up against the run with smaller defensive tackles?
yeah, I think it's all going to be about how you want to fit the run. It's all going to be how these linebackers are able to fit. I think they have a high level. They're really good at doing that, right? These linebackers are really good at playing the run. And so it's all going to be about, do you want your defensive tackles to penetrate, or do you want them to be run stoppers? And that's where it's not really a scheme. I'm excited to see them roll out this 4-2-5 again. I think it's really productive for just how they have this defense built. I think it's really just bringing different types of bodies in, and hopefully they're going to – I've been pushing for what feels like years now. I want to see a better defensive line rotation. I want to see different personnel sets. I think that's to stop the run, not as much of, you know, mixing the scheme up as much, but getting different bodies in there and working that and keeping them fresh. And yeah,
for sure. Parker's got a lot of content planned here. I'm excited to see you dive a little deeper into that stuff. I don't want you to give away too many nuggets, my man. And our guy Evan Hartman here at TWSN, he asked a question for all of us. Do we think Burrow throws for 300 yards against the New England Patriots? I mean, I'll just say this. I don't think that they'll be able to run the ball as successfully as many might anticipate on the New England Patriots. Patriots do have an underrated run defense, even with Christian Barmore out. I do think the Bengals are going to experience a lot of success in the pass game. I don't know if any of you have a different opinion or take. Parker, I'll go with you, then I'll go to Daniel.
For sure. No, I think you definitely can. It's all about how this game lays out. I mean, if they get ahead in the first half, I'm sure they'll just kind of tone him down and kind of let him coast through. Hopefully they can lean on this run game, but I still have him throwing for 3+ touchdowns. I'm
not sure if we lost him.
I mean, we're definitely going to be able to we'll see how this goes.
For sure, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think the easy thing is to look at the touchdowns. And I look at, like, especially, obviously, this isn't our betting segment, but his line's at 1.5 touchdowns. I don't see Zach Moss vulturing 2 touchdowns. I don't see them rushing for 2 touchdowns. He's going to throw at least 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that's an easy base against this Patriots team. And it really wouldn't shock me if it's much more likely that he throws for 350 than he throws for 200. So I think it's a big-time opening game for Joe Burrow.
Parker, if you could, let them know where to follow you at. I know we've got your Twitter handle, I believe, down in the comment section, but where can they follow your work at, my man?
For sure, yeah. I post everything out there on my X or Twitter, or whatever it's called nowadays, at ParkerBlake60. Everything I do, I post there. I'm really bad at managing all my other stuff that I got going on. I try and write for a few different places. I got a lot of stuff going on, hopefully here soon with TWSN. I got a couple articles already cooking up. I'm going to try and send out before, you know, kickoff tonight for my team. And outside of that, it's really just follow me on X, and I'll post everything there, man. Everything's going to be there.
Parker, we appreciate you for joining the Sit Down Malik Wright Morning Show. Parker will be joining us regularly on the show. I believe a couple times a week, actually. So I'm really, really excited for him to be joining us on the show more often and talking things through, all things ball. Parker, appreciate you, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm excited. For what we have cooking, man.
Catch you, Parker.
Yes, sir, man. We'll talk.
Take it easy.
You as well. If you guys could do us a huge favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. We just had one guest in our guy, Parker Blake, but we're going to move right on over to another guest, our TWSN football analyst, Mike O'Hara. Mike, thanks for joining the show. How are we doing today?
I'm not too bad, man. I'm not too bad. Happy to be here once again to talk some fantasy football. It's we had the first taste last night, and we're thankfully getting another game tonight. it's really here, and I'm excited. So went 1-0 on the bets last night. Fantasy
Yes,
team
sir.
looked good. So we're gonna be here to help some people with some start sit advice.
Listen, O'Hara, I appreciate that, brother. And again, it's like we talked offline. We were texting. I am the tight end whisperer. That is my nickname. Last night I gotta just take a little stroll real quick. I told folks to say, hey, make sure you guys bet. I know that we're talking fantasy, but I got to say this real quick. I said, make sure we bet Noah Gray. His props was sitting at 12.5. I even said Isaiah Likely. No one expected Isaiah Likely to pop off and have the game that he had, obviously. But Noah Gray was a guy that, that was whispering to me through the grapevine, if you will. And it was pretty cool to see him hit that prop bet and see a lot of people make some money off of that. But hey, listen, O'Hara, I know you want to talk about some of the starts and sits that you had. The floor is yours, my man.
Yeah, so the first guy you got to get into your lineup for me is Chris Godwin. He wasn't really much of he was a disappointment last year, to be completely honest. But I really think that this is going to be a bounce back campaign for Godwin in general, and this is also just a phenomenal matchup for him. So first off, last season we had under former offensive coordinator Dave Canales, Chris Godwin saw his lowest snap rate out of the slot that he has seen in years. He was running about 32% of his routes out of the slot last year, down from the 50 to 60% that we had typically seen for him in years past when he was producing at a high level. But new offensive coordinator Liam Cohen has made a promise that he is going to be their primary weapon out of the slot, and he did just that in the preseason. It was a super small sample size, but 6 out of his 7 routes with the starters came out of the slot, and the value of slot routes is very well known throughout the fantasy space. I mean, it just makes for easier targets, a higher catch rate, and it's easier production for a guy like Godwin. So a return to the slot for him is super, super big in terms of his fantasy floor and just overall production and consistency. And then you couple it with a really, really intriguing matchup against the Commanders. I mean, there's really no way to sugarcoat it. This could very easily be the worst secondary in the NFL.
Wow.
They competed for it last year, and I really wouldn't be shocked if they do it once again this year. They didn't really make any significant moves in the offseason to bolster the back end of their defense, and we saw offenses pick apart this secondary at will last year, and I fully expect Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to do the same in Week 1. Last season, the Commanders ranked 31st in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers and quarterbacks. So I'm all over. Get all the Buccaneers you can into your lineup this week, especially through their passing attack. I really love Chris Godwin as a quality flex option in PPR leagues this week.
Man, I'm the Chris Godwin love. It's funny. I was just sent a text from a friend earlier, and hopefully, if he's watching, which I know he watches every morning show, because what else would you rather be doing on your morning besides watching the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show presented by TWSM? But he said to me, Jamar Chase or Chris Godwin, which one should I start? That's what he asked. He said Jamar Chase or Chris Godwin. And I think the reason why I was asking that is because of the unknown with Jamar Chase's quote unquote status, right? If he was going to play or not. And I use air quotations. You can decipher what I mean by that. But what are your thoughts on that? Maybe you can kind of answer that for him. Who should he start this week? Should he start Jamar Chase, the guy who was practiced a couple times this week, limited? Or should he start Chris Godwin, the guy you just raved about against the Commander secondary?
If Jamar Chase is going to take the football field to take the field in Week 1, he's got to be in your fantasy lineups. There's no way to get around it. I mean, I think we're pretty agreed on this. Like Jamar Chase, lock it in, the top 3 wide receiver talent in the NFL. You can have that debate, but I think we're on the same page there. If he's on an NFL football field, he has to be in your starting lineup, regardless of how good the matchup is for your other receivers. I mean, he offers a ceiling and that other players just cannot. He can turn his fantasy performance around. He can be having a bad week and turn it around in one play. I mean, the play that always comes to mind for me is that Week 17 matchup against the Chiefs 2 years ago, where he just blew by everyone and just took a house call. I mean, he's just that type of player that can take a routine slant route to the house just on any given play. So he was drafted in the top half of the first round in the majority of these drafts for a reason. He's got to be in your lineup. I know he's docked in a lot of people's rankings right now because of the unknown, but we should have some clarity by the time you have to make that lineup decision. The Bengals are playing at 1 o'clock. The Commanders and Buccaneers play in the 4 o'clock window. So you should have some clarity on whether or not Jamar Chase will be playing before you have to make that decision. But if he is, easy click to put into your lineup this week.
Of course, man. And I guess the next question that I have is, outside of the love that you had for Chris Godwin, is there any other matchup you're looking at for this upcoming Sunday or even tonight, for instance, that you're looking at and you say you absolutely love this matchup for said player and you should 100% have this guy in your fantasy lineup? I know you had some starts, I know you had some sits, so I'll let you run wild.
Yeah, so the other one that I really want to be getting into lineups this week is Jackson Smith and Jigba. And honestly, the Seahawks offense in general, that passing attack, the outside of Pat Surtain, the second, this is just a really pedestrian secondary in Denver. They did just make him the highest paid defensive back of all time in Pat Surtain. But I'm looking to attack this. Looking to attack this secondary through the Seahawks passing attack, and specifically Jackson Smith and Jigba. Tyler Lockett, a lot of people have been anticipating that JSN is going to take that leap to become the second option in this offense over the aging Tyler Lockett this offseason, and I'm really buying into it, and I really think that he can do that from week one, from the jump, because Tyler Lockett, he has missed a good amount of practice. It's been over a week of practice missed. He's coming into the season with a leg injury already. We could very realistically see Lockett on limited snaps this week, just opening up more opportunities for JSN to make moves and make plays out of the slot and potentially get some routes outside. So I'm very much interested in JSN as a talent. I think he was completely stymied and stifled by Shane Waldron's offensive system last year. And with new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb running the show, that air raid offense that we saw at Washington last year, the number 2 passing offense in college football last year, I think he's going to bring some really, really intriguing elements that are going to elevate this passing attack. And I think he is going to be able to unlock Jackson Smith and Jigba. You combine it with a quality matchup in terms of the secondary in Denver and the fact that Tyler Lockett could not be playing at a full route participation this week. I really think it's going to be a big week for Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Oh, Haro, nice to see you, brother. I've got a couple questions. Let's switch it over. I want you to be a negative Nancy for me real quick, brother. Who are the guys that you are not fans of this week, whether it's, because of a matchup or because of something that's happened in the offseason? Who are guys that you're not a fan of?
Yeah, I think that one guy that I will not really be starting this week, and he was drafted as a fringe starter to start the year. I'm not going to be starting Zamir White. I personally, I didn't really invest in him in my personal leagues, but I know based on how he was drafted, that's a guy that some people are going to be considering as a start this week. I don't really think that he is a guy that we should be interested in whatsoever this week. He's just the epitome of a compiler. He's a guy that needs to get a ton of rushing work. I'm not sold on Zamir White as a talent. Not much draft capital invested whatsoever from the Raiders organization into White when he was brought into the organization. So a low commitment in general from the Raiders to this guy. And I know you can get fired up about how big of biceps this guy has and how cool he looks on the football field, but I mean, that doesn't translate to production on the field. He doesn't have a 3-down profile. He's going to be out there for first and second downs only. And you're relying on an offense that is quite frankly suspect. I mean, Gardner Minshew, he kept the Colts afloat last year, but he's not a guy who's going to elevate the offense. And for a guy that's going to rely on a plenty of volume and just a very large workload, I'm going to keep him out of my lineup this week until I get some eyes on him on the field and really how this backfield is going to be split up. Throughout the offseason, head coach Anthony Pierce has highlighted that Zamir White is going to be their go-to guy on first and second downs, but in the preseason, he was in a pretty healthy split with Alexander Madison. I don't want to lean into that too much, but until we have more clarity on how this backfield is going to be chopped up, Zamir White's not a guy I'll be looking to get into my lineup.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And I've got another question. Once again, guys, if you guys have any questions, make sure to drop them down in the comment section. We appreciate you guys. I want you to look at today's game, Mike, and these are two teams I feel like a lot of people have major questions about, right? AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon, and then on the opposite side, all the Packers wide receivers. So give me a quick breakdown of both their teams. Who are the guys that you're fans of this season? Like Devontae, is he going to get more work than we're expecting because, Kellen Moore? And on the same side, the Packers, which wide receiver is it? Or is it none of them? Or is it all of them? Which one?
So I'll start off with the Eagles. The guys, I'm just interested in the in this passing attack in general for the reason you highlighted. Kellen Moore coming into the fray here in Philadelphia. We saw AJ Brown start the year off last year on a pace that was equaling Tyreek Hill's. Like through 8 weeks last year, AJ Brown was a legitimate contender for the Offensive Player of the Year, and I don't think that gets talked about enough. He started out the year starting in week 3, ending in week 8 on a streak of 6 straight games with at least 125 receiving yards. It was absolutely bonkers what Brown was doing to start the year, and he's a set it and forget it kind of guy. He's going to be in your lineup every single week no matter what. Back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. I think that's very, very much in store for him this year. Very realistic with Kellen Moore, but I am very, very bullish on what Devonta Smith can do this year. And like I said, it's just in general, like directionally, I want to be investing in this Eagles offense because of what I think Kellen Moore can bring to the table. But the word on the street throughout the offseason has been that Devonta Smith is getting more reps out of the slot, and we saw that. What Kellen Moore's power slot role we saw with CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen more specifically last year, what Kellen Moore's power slot role can do for a guy in fantasy. He just gives you those layup targets, those easy looks that allows him to get into space and get more reps. And if Devonta Smith is the guy who earns that role and is running routes out of the slot at a higher rate than we've seen in the past, he is going to be a very, very massive fantasy value. You could have gotten him in the 4th round in a lot of these drafts, but he could very easily solidify himself in like the top 20 ranks of fantasy wide receivers. So I'm really, really excited about what Devonta Smith can do in terms of paying off of his value. And then from the Packers side of the ball, this week, you got to be really excited about Josh Jacobs. There was some concern about him just because of his lacking efficiency last year and just all around kind of having a downturn year. But the concern was that he was going to be splitting touches with somebody, whether it be A.J. Dillon or rookie Marshawn Lloyd. Marshawn Lloyd, A.J. Dillon obviously hits the season-ending IR. Marshawn Lloyd, questionable with a hamstring injury. Emmanuel Wilson, their other rookie or their other running back in that offense, is questionable for this game as well. So it could very realistically be just a steady, healthy dose of Josh Jacobs on all 3 downs. So I think he's going to be in your lineup no matter what, but I would be excited if I was a Josh Jacobs owner. And then in terms of this wide receiver room, it's kind of a mess. The anticipation is that Romeo Doubs is going to be a 100%, close to a 100%, like full-time route participation type of player. He's going to be the outside X receiver, and there was going to be some sort of rotation between those other 3 guys, Wicks, Reed, and Watson. I really like Watson just because when he's been healthy, he's earned the most valuable targets a fantasy wide receiver can see. He gets downfield targets, he gets red zone targets, he gets end zone targets. It's the type of looks that produce fantasy points at a really, really high clip. So this is something that I'm hesitant to start many of these guys this week outside of maybe a nod to Watson or Reed in the flex. But once we get some more clarity on how they're rotating these guys, I think this is a wide receiver room that's going to be very attackable.
Appreciate you, Mike. Mike, you do some fantastic work here at TWS, and man, I'm looking forward to you joining the show back again next week. I appreciate your time, my man. Hopefully it is a successful, I can't say my words today, a successful fantasy football season for you, and hopefully your fantasy teams are rocking. I don't know how many leagues you're a part of, man, but I can only imagine it's a lot.
It's a number that I will not disclose exactly. I'll let you know I did do my first fantasy draft of the year in March. So
there you go.
Okay. Yeah. So that can give you a clue of what we've got going on here. But excited to help everyone throughout the season. I'll be here regularly all fall and winter long. So excited to just give everyone my advice and thoughts on the fantasy football landscape.
Appreciate you, Mike.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike.
Catch up with you guys later.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was Michael Hara, TWSN fantasy football analyst. And fantasy football is king. It's a big part of what we do here at TWSN. And when one of our fantasy football guys leaves, another guy enters the fray, if you will. So joining us now is TWSN football analyst Steve Bradshaw. Steve, how's it going, man?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm going good. It's going good, man. It's going good. It's a big weekend. You get to finally see what Caleb Williams is, man. And somebody said Gary Jellison says take over Daniel. Malik can't talk. I agree with him. I probably can't talk too much there, but Steve, I want to allow you to kind of give your opinion on some of your favorite fantasy matchups. Mike, we heard Mike's perspective, and one day we got to get you both on here at the same exact time. But I want to hear some matchups that you love, that you think the people should really be paying attention to this weekend.
Yeah, I'll give you. Well, Mike was kind of talking about really liking JSN. So I'm going to start with the negative side of the ball first and give you my sit. And that's going to be DK Metcalf. Now, he kind of alluded to the fact that they don't have a great defense outside of Pat Surtain. And I agree. I think that that's going to really help JSN. But I think Metcalf is and just has always been a much better real-life receiver than a fantasy guy. He's a perennial wide receiver 2 every year, around 14 points per game. Not bad by any means, but I think people are kind of just overrating the fact that, he's that big, freakish, athletic guy, but he doesn't really command targets and score fantasy points in the way that he kind of gets hyped up to be. So I think he's going to be on the outside working on Pat Surtain, and that's actually going to help out JSN in the slot. Just with that Ryan Grubb offense as well, I think that's kind of what they're going to be looking to do is feed JSN, go 3 wide receiver sets. Assuming Lockett's healthy, I think that could be really good. And I think DK is just going to be used more of a decoy per se. And on top of that, they're playing the Broncos. So it's not a great matchup either. I believe DraftKings has it as an over-under of 41.5, which is one of the lowest marks of the week. And they're also 6-point favorites, or 5.5, whatever book you're looking at. So I think the second half should be very run-heavy. They want to get Kenneth Walker involved, see what they have out of Zach Charbonnet. So I just really don't like the script for DK this week, and I'm really not a big fan of him in general.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you there, and I think it's just difficult because there's also a ton of mouths to feed. Once again, guys, if you have any questions, make sure to drop them down below. We had a question a little earlier I want to get your thoughts on, and then it'll kind of take me to where I want to go next with this. Keon Coleman or Christian Watson this week, who would you start?
I would go Christian Watson. I've been a big Christian Watson fan. I actually have Watson. I'm not a huge fan of him this week. I think that he's a guy that I kind of want to see more of before I plug and play him every single week. But he's definitely a guy. I mean, it's a good matchup. There's going to be a lot of points scored. He has a ton of upside. So if he's in your flex or wide receiver 2, I definitely don't hate it. Keon Coleman is he's a guy that I'm not too high on. I have him as my wide receiver 43 for the week. So not too big of a difference, about 5 spots. I think they're both upside plays, but just give me Watson based on the fact that while they're both upside plays, we've actually seen him produce in the NFL. I think it's a better matchup, and typically rookies start slow, and I definitely expect that to be the case for Keon Coleman because he's more of a project receiver. I actually really don't mind him in the second half of the year, but I think early on he's kind of going to be given some mini QJ treatment because he's just not a guy that's totally there yet. He has a lot of things to work on, a lot of things he needs to develop. But yeah, I go Watson and just hopefully he's your flex or wide receiver 2 this week.
No, yeah, I'm totally with you. And I think with Keon Coleman too, another thing is there is a huge contrast between the production of first round wide receivers and second round and third round wide receivers in their rookie season. But my question also was tailored towards the Buffalo Bills. I want to get your thoughts. Fantasy wise, outside of Josh Allen, are you confident in James Cook? Are you confident in Dalton Kincaid? Just give me an overlook on the Bills as well as their matchup against the Cardinals.
Yeah, James Cook is so-so. I mean, I think he's going to be a low-end running back 1 at the most. I have him actually as my RB11 this week because I like the matchup. I think anytime you have the Bills in a solid game environment, you have to be excited about that. James Cook is a guy that can catch passes. He had a really good end of the season. I'm not all in on him, but I think that it's kind of forgotten about. He was an absolute beast in a lot of people's leading up to the fantasy playoffs or even the start of it last season. But Dalton Kincaid, though, is a guy that I really like. Kincaid is my tight end 3, which is higher than most people have it. I know a lot of people were really excited about Mark Andrews. So I don't think that's too crazy of a take to have Kincaid over Andrews anymore after what we saw yesterday. But even Trey McBride, I like Kincaid over him. Just that offense where it seems like they're going to be playing him as that big slot receiver. That's exactly what we want. Tight ends, you have to figure out how they're going to be used, because just because someone's a good real-life tight end does not mean they're going to be good in fantasy, because you have blocking, and that's a big part of fantasy football. And if you're getting utilized as just a blocker versus a receiver, that's not really going to give you fantasy points. Kincaid is a good enough blocker to where he'll get on the field, but they don't view him as a typical tight end. They view him as that big slot receiver that they're going to line him up out wide, and he's not just going to stay in line and do all the dirty work like, some other tight ends might.
Yeah, no, Kincaid is definitely going to be a difference maker. I've got him in a couple leagues myself. So let's go ahead real quick, Steve, and let's plant your flag for this week, right? Give me some of your guys that these are your guys that you're super confident that are going to be in, finishing as a top 5, wide receiver, a top 5 running back, or even a sleeper that you have for a, possible flex position.
Yeah, my must-start guy of the week at running back is going to be Tony Pollard.
Okay.
And I'm a Bears fan, so they're playing the Bears, and I think it's going to be a really good matchup. Now, it's not just me saying that, though, because sportsbooks surprisingly have this as a fairly high-scoring game. I believe it depends what line you're looking at, but if you're looking at DraftKings or BetMGM, it's around 44.5, 45 over-under. So fairly high-scoring matchup. You can expect a decent number of points to be scored. And Tony Pollard's just a guy that I'm kind of in on this year at cost, because people are just have a bad taste in their mouth from what he did last season, right?
Yeah.
He was being drafted super high. That was always a mistake because he never proved that he could handle that 3-down workload. That's not what he does best. That's not how he wins. It's almost like he was better playing next to Ezekiel Elliott. That's when he had his 15.6 point per game season, when he wasn't the 3-down back. Now, wouldn't it be great if he was, playing in a committee again, and that might help him? Oh, wait, that's exactly what's happening right now with Tajay Spears. I get it. It's not the same thing. I really don't understand the pairing because Spears is a similar back to him, and he's not a grinder. But at the same time, Pollard's a guy that wins off efficiency, not just getting a ton of touches. So I think that you had the injury last year. He was kind of playing through that. He was just getting beat up because of how many carries he was taking. I think if the Titans offense should be pretty solid in a game where it's fairly high projecting in total points scored, I really like him this week, and I'm a big fan of him for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, I really like Tony Pollard as well. And as we touched on a little bit earlier, it's my matchup of the week, man. I love the Titans. I think that this is I'm just ready, and I think they're way too big of underdogs against a team with a rookie quarterback. Real quick, touch on a wide receiver. Obviously, you just gave us a running back, but give me a wide receiver, even a quarterback that you feel like is being extremely slept on for week 1. That's, hey, this dude is going to break out in a big way.
Well, I think Caleb Williams is going to have a big week 1. Now, Obviously, I'm a big fan of him, but I think that people are kind of just underrating the fact that he has one of the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. Rome Odunze might start a little slow, but he's still fantastic. You have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. I expect Allen to be very good at the start of the year, at least. And I mean, he showed a ton of flashes during the preseason, and now I expect that to carry into the regular season. But an underrated thing about Williams is he has the ability to run the football as well. He showed it in flashes during the preseason, and rushing is king for quarterbacks. A lot of people don't have him in their starting lineup. And, well, I'm not saying he should be your QB5, QB7 for the week. I'm getting him in there as my QB12, QB11 if I can, because I think, again, we talked about pretty solid matchup. Seems like there's going to be a lot of points scored. So give me a guy with decent rushing upside, great weapons, and has an elite prospect profile.
Completely. And let me just go to one more. We touched on a running back, wide receiver. Give me a quarterback that you're a huge fan of. Like me personally, I'm all over Kyler Murray this week, man. I think Kyler Murray with his new improved, the weapons that he's got, the biggest question is his offensive line, but give me a quarterback that you're saying is a bona fide top 5 or a guy outside of obviously Caleb Williams that you just discussed.
I'm also a big fan of Jaden Daniels. I know he's a rookie, and I know they typically start slow, but I'm not really expecting too much out of Daniels through the air anyway. He gets his production as a runner. He is an elite runner. He had over 700 yards on the ground in college for his last 3 seasons, and keep in mind, that's including sacks. Went over 1,000 yards on the ground in his last season. And especially if we're kind of baking in the fact that you're knocking it against him, that he's not going to be super great throwing the football or just in general, I think that's going to force him to rely on his legs more, which, may not be great for the Commanders, but it's going to be great for our fantasy team. So really love that for this week.
Completely.
Steve, thank you so much, my man, for joining the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show, brother. I know this is only going to be the start of you joining us on many shows moving forward, man. I'm looking to talk fantasy football with you all throughout the football season, man. And the folks I'm sure they're gonna be following you, but we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to make this a more consistent thing.
Yes, sir, my man. You take care. Enjoy your weekend. This has been a crazy fantasy football Friday here on the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show. We had Michael O'Hara join us. We had Steve Bradshaw join us. Steve, we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get back on here soon.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to seeing you next week, man.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too.
Catch you.
So fantasy football is king here at TWSN. Friday shows we're going to put a huge emphasis on it because so many of you are involved with fantasy football leagues, and we want to make sure that you guys are winning your leagues. And I know some of you play in some competitive leagues where there is money on the line, and we're in the business of making you money here at TWSN, whether that be fantasy football or through our bets. Yesterday was a very profitable day for us. I think me personally, I only missed on one bet, and that was Isaiah Pacheco's receptions, and I missed that by one. He finished with 2. He was supposed to have 3. He finished with 2. Last I checked. Maybe he did hit. I don't know, but I think he finished. I'm pretty sure Isaiah Pacheco finished the game with 2 receptions, which was like a damn moment for me. I'm going to run down to you guys on some of my favorite bets before I kick it over to Daniel. I know Daniel's got his favorite bets. Again, if you look over here in the right-hand corner, you'll see the TWSN Patreon QR code. So if you guys are not subscribed currently, I would encourage you to. Don't feel like you have to, but if you're in the business of making money, not just NFL, we also have our UFC picks on there, daily MLB picks, and so much more. It's a really, really awesome, I would say, community, and it was really cool to see how many people were excited the fact that we were able to win them some money. But I'll tell you some of my favorite bets for the weekend. I'm going to do a quick run through for them before I pass it off to Daniel to do his quick run through before we head out of here. And that is Josh Allen over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That is a prop that I've lived by the last few years. I expect him to do well against this Cardinals defense. I expect a big day from his tight ends as well. Aaron Rodgers over 1.5 passing touchdowns against the San Francisco 49ers. Listen, the Niners love their defensive line, love their linebacking core, but I don't love their cornerback room. Keeping it going. Justin Herbert over 1.5 passing touchdowns against the Raiders. I think Justin Herbert is going to be finding his rhythm in this new Harbaugh system. And I think he's going to do well. I think the Raiders, again, I like what Parker was saying earlier about the Raiders having a strong defensive line. I don't feel the exact same about the defensive back room. I think they can improve upon there, but I still think Justin Herbert is going to have success there. Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns against the Patriots. I think Joe Burrow is going to have a big passing day against the New England Patriots, and one of those passing touchdowns are going to go to the Bengals tight end, Mike Gesicki, which you can get at plus money when the prop finally arrives again. Bijan Robinson over 3.5 receptions against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a focal point in this offense. I expect them to get the most out of him. And I expect a little bit of a revenge game for Bijan because guess what? He's going up against his old coach and Arthur Smith, who's the new offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he's going to say, you didn't like me then. How about you like me now? Gerald Everett over 1.5 receptions against against Tennessee Titans. Listen, a tight end is a quarterback's best friend, especially for a rookie. I expect Gerald Everett to be active in this passing game. And last but not least, Joe Mixon over 2.5 receptions against the Indianapolis Colts. He's been active throughout his career against the Indianapolis Colts. He's done really, really well against the Indianapolis Colts. And I expect Joe Mixon to have a big debut in the passing game for the Houston Texans. Daniel.
Yeah, let me run through these really quickly. I have to go with my favorite one first off. Tennessee Titans plus 3.5 against the Bears. I've been on it all week, and this is the one I am riding or dying with. I'm fading rookie quarterbacks in week 1, and I appreciate what Steve was saying, about Caleb Williams. I think Caleb could have a good game. This Titans defense is going to make life hell on Caleb Williams. Caleb didn't even have a great preseason. He was 10 of 20. Throwing the ball in the preseason. So I think the Titans come out, cover 3.5. They win outright. And then when I'm looking at just straight up props, I've got 4 for you guys. Garrett Wilson versus the 49ers, easily one of my favorite matchups. This dude has been dominating with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. Now the dude's got Aaron Rodgers. So Garrett Wilson, 70 yards, as well as a sprinkle on him to get 100 yards. That's Monday Night Football. I think he starts out the year with a bang. Give me 7 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. And then I got 3 quarterbacks for you. Discuss Joe Burrow. I love his passing touchdowns, Malik. I also like his over passing yards. So here's my parlay. Joe Burrow, 275 passing yards. Baker Mayfield, 250 passing yards. CJ Stroud, 275 passing yards. That's my 3-leg passing yard parlay. And CJ Stroud cooked them last year, the Colts, for 350 yards. He's got 3 great wide receivers, and Baker Mayfield would do the same exact thing against the Commanders' putrid secondary.
I love our quick picks. I love the fact that we can incorporate our betting picks into this show, which was so awesome for me, which is why I wanted to launch the Sit Down Malik Wright morning show. We appreciate you guys for spending your mornings with us. I hope that you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. Remember, this is going to be your one-stop shop for all things NFL and Bengals as well. We did a sit-down interview with Jermaine Burton, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, and defensive back Dejon Anthony, which you can catch on the YouTube channel, where we discuss the game and life beyond football, so much more. We have our betting plays, our UFC picks, and obviously the morning show, State of the Jungle, every single Wednesday. But we did it. We were live every single day this week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we appreciate you guys for joining, for watching, and keeping up with all things TWSN related. We hope that we see you guys on Sunday to recap this show. You know, we've been recapping Bengals shows after recapping Bengals games after every game for the last year and a half. And that show returns. So I'll be live after the Bengals Patriots game to recap that game with you guys, to talk it through, the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then we'll be back Monday morning for the Sit Down Malik Wright morning show. Remember, there's only one way you should be watching sports, talking sports in the morning, and that is